All right, John Gibbons, Gibby, welcome to Jays from Home. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, hey, my pleasure. It's always good to talk to some Canucks, man. I tell you what, I was up there last week, and it was like best time I had in a while. It's been so long since I've been there, and I appreciate all the support I'm getting.
For sure, we're becoming a baseball country more and more every day. It feels like. Now I'm recording here from Ottawa, and I guess you were up in our neck of the woods a little while ago, checking out
Oh,
some snowy owls. So tell me about that experience.
have you ever seen a snowy owl?
I've only seen pictures of it. I've been near the area and everything, but
Right.
yeah, I never seen them in the wild.
Hey, Matt, the most beautiful bird we've ever seen. My wife's into wildlife photography, right? And so, we go out to Yellowstone. She photo buffaloes, bears, you name it. She loves that stuff. Uh, Bald eagles, golden eagles. But then we were. I don't know how we first saw the first because she's been trying to find owls, right? Has
Mhm.
never been able to come across one. And I don't know if she was just googling owl or something, and she came across this snowy owl. We go, you got to be kidding me! So anyway, we tracked down. There's this gentleman that lives in Ottawa that give these tours, the workshops. So we went up there for 5 days and shot some wonderful experience. A couple snowstorms came through, but it was just it was a blast. We had a wonderful time up there in Ottawa.
Great. Now, you seem to be spending a lot of time, at least in the off season, in nature. When you're there, kind of like seeing all these animals out in the wild. How often does baseball creep into your thoughts?
Well, the number one reason I'm out there doing all this because my wife. I'm trying to keep my wife happy, right? But
Great.
excuse me, man. Um, You know what? I've been in baseball so long, right? It's ingrained in me, right?
Uh-huh.
So I'll even if I'm out there, uh, at the time when I started going out there, I was working for the Braves as a special assignment scout. Then we had this book going, and then the podcast and all that. So I was still involved somewhat, right? So I had to kind of follow some things. Um, but my whole life I've checked box scores and things like that.
Mhm.
Every morning and check out the latest baseball news and so that's just kind of what I do now, and because I'm still a huge Blue Jay fan. I'm a baseball fan, obviously. So it's just like kind of routine. It's just like eating breakfast sometimes now.
And like the book says, you're a baseball lifer, right?
Yeah, like it or not, man. I don't know. I don't know if I'm proud of. I mean, if that's I'm not solving any of the world's problems. Put it that way.
Well, some I don't know. Maybe baseball can do it. Maybe that's the answer.
Right.
You mentioned Buffalo mentality a lot on your podcast. Can you explain what that means?
Well, you know what? My wife, I would tell you, she loves photographing buffalo. Right? We go out to Yellowstone, and it's like she fell in love with these big old burly animals.
Mhm.
So then we were just researching some stuff, and we came across it's called buffalo mentality, and the psychologist kind of explained it this way: when in Colorado, you got the Rocky Mountains, I guess, in one half, and then the plains on the other.
Mhm.
And he was relating this to people that battle. Everybody goes through things in lives, the difficulties, what have you, and basically try to correlate how you deal with things. He says the buffalo, when a storm comes over the Rocky Mountains, a big storm, buffalo, he said, when you watch them, they'll run right into the storm, right? So then they get through the storm fast. And cows, on the other hand, they're one of the few places I guess they herd together out there. The cows will run the opposite, away from the storm, so the storm catches them, and then they're in it longer. So with the way he was comparing, says, listen, buffalo mentality, you take your storms head on, your problems, whatever it might be, and you're not in it as long, right? You get through these things, eventually. Where if you're a cow and you're running with it, it's like you never get out of the thing. And so we had a little fun with that because she loved buffaloes and not too far down the road, we're going to come out with a little something on that anyway. So maybe T-shirts and stuff, but that's how all that started. So now when we come across somebody that you see it all the time, right? People, because everybody deals with problems in life, and the people that tackle and take it head on and are able to overcome incredible odds, things like that. See, they got buffalo mentality, man. They just, man, here, and it's admirable when people are able to do this. It's not easy, right? I mean, human nature says a lot of times you run to stay out of the storm.
Yeah, no,
But
running right into the adversity is definitely a way for baseball players, in
Yeah.
particular, to tackle their problems. And you see guys like yesterday, Jose Barrios. He entered the storm that is the Houston Astros, and he came out relatively unscathed. Can't say the same about the bullpen, but like lots of players, that's a great way to.
Well, you
to
know
think
what,
about it.
Matt? Hey, and now here's a guy, right? He was one of the top pitchers when he's in Minnesota, right? And then the Blue Jays trade for him, and they signed him to a long-term deal. And for the most part, he struggled since he signed that extension, big contract with the Blue Jays. A team, but and he's taking the heat like they should. When guys get the big contracts, it goes hand in hand. You can't run from that, and there's a lot of responsibility with that. But he was really struggling there. Everybody say, "What do you do with Barrios? You get rid of him, blah blah, whatever." Right? But you look at his last two outings; it's almost like he was kind of at that tipping point. He could have gone either way. If he continues down that, I don't know what they do with him, right? But no, you know what? He just kept plugging away. And his last two outings have been tremendous. He beat Tampa to break up their 13-game win streak, 12, whatever it was. And then last night against the world champs, he basically shut them down. So you know what? Hey, tip my hat to the guy, but that's a perfect example of Buffalo mentality. He could have cowered and disappeared.
For sure. And I would say that Yordan Alvarez and Jose Abreu are definitely a storm that you need to face head on if you want to beat the Astros.
Great comparison right there.
I'm dealing with the same cold there.
Hey, well, you know what I did? I was up in Toronto last week. I picked up COVID.
Oh no! Well,
and not had it yet. So I came home and I started feeling lousy and tested positive the other day. And because I was supposed to go back up there this weekend, and so I said I had to cancel that because. So, anyways, that's my cough. I think I'm on the tail end side, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll hope you're feeling better soon.
Thank you.
No worries. Now you're looking pretty laid back, and in your book you even say like baseball is a game where you've got to be able to relax and slow the game down. When you try harder, it backfires on you. Is this why you sort of project that laid back demeanor, like when you're managing a team?
Pretty much, Matt, that's who I am, right? I can be very relaxed, but on the inside, I'm churning a little bit. And as far as being, like I talked about, being able to slow the game down and confidence and all that, I had trouble doing that, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like this can't, that was my secret, and I had a great career. No, that's not what happened, right? On the playing end of it, anyway. But that's what the great players do. They just slow it down. Where I'm churning on the inside in more attack mode, right? But that works against you a lot of times in baseball. But as far as my personality, when I got into coaching and managing, I understood, the players are the show. Basically, my job is to get out of the way, hold them together, make sure they're going the same direction, right? And then let them do their thing. And so sometimes you gotta back off and get out of the way, right? And so, I guess the way I do that, any couch I can find, any place I can kick back, I do that. Just to get out of the way and let the boys do their thing. So I've always kind of been laid back, and it can be a little deceiving because inside, a lot of times I'm churning pretty good.
I think a lot of coaches and managers are that way too, whether it's shown inside or out.
Right.
Now going way back to the start of your kind of baseball journey, what drew you to wanting to be like a catcher when you were starting out way back in high school?
Yeah, when I first started playing ball, I actually played my first Little League game in Goose Bay, Labrador. Mm-hmm. But when I ended up in Houston, Texas, and I was playing for a team down there, I was always that right fielder. In Little League, you put the worst player on the team or the guy that has trouble, we put him out in right field, right? He just picks daisies, because no balls ever come out there. So that's kind of what I was doing. And then we went down to Houston, Texas. I was playing on a team, and they needed a catcher one day. And I was at the point now where I could catch the ball. I mean, it was still a young kid, but and the first time I got back there, they had the helmets on and then the mask, and first pitch I ever caught, I got too close to the hitter, right? So he swings, and his bat catches me in the back of the head, right? But I had a helmet on, man, and they weren't swinging that hard there. And I thought, for some reason, this is for me, man. That was kind of, I don't know if that spurred me on to become a catcher. And then I just learned this. You know what? I figured out, your catcher's involved in everything, man. He's the only guy looking out at the field, right? Everybody else is looking at him and the batter. I said, gosh, I kind of like this, you know?
Yeah, no, I'm kind of the same way. I remember when I was a little kid, like 10 years old, I got a book on catching strategy. It's nice just
Did
to be able,
you?
yeah. It's nice just to be able to kind of even just catching the ball. Like it's the best, one of the best things, best feelings in baseball that you can do, and just being there to catch every pitch and behind every play. It's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. You know, be almost like to a goalie, you know? I mean, goalie's
Mhm.
right there. You know, they can't, if they don't beat you, they can't win, right? And so you're like the last line of defense, you know, you can run saver, score, shot saver, whatever. Same with catcher, kind of, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Now throughout, like you were in the minors a lot. You saw a lot of great players come up. You saw Daryl Strawberry, Dwight Gooden, Kevin Mitchell, even like later on Sammy Sosa, Juan Gonzalez, people like that, Rafael Palmeiro. What was it like just seeing those guys come up? What did it feel like just watching the talent?
Gosh, it was like, wow, gosh, that's what I mean. Thinking, that's what I want to be, man. I mean, look how easy they make it, you know. And I get, you know, the guys I mentioned that you just mentioned right there. I mean, they're the all stars, right?
Mhm.
They do things a little better and a little easier than most, anyway, right? But there's some. I think. Well, I just had a great appreciation for someone that can master something, anything, right? It doesn't have to be baseball; it could be anything that. And you could tell that, you know, they were given a lot of God given talent, right?
Mhm.
But they still had to develop that and you know become who they are. But I also noticed too, there's something about these guys mentally that separate them. They just didn't have necessarily a heck of a lot more talent than the other guy that didn't make it, or let's say me. But there's something in their mind, you know. They were. It's almost like it's like they could care less, but they really cared. You know, I mean, it's like
Mhm.
when they struck out of the bases loaded, it didn't ruin their day, it didn't ruin their week or whatever, right? Or they made an error, or they gave up a home run or a big hit. It's like, so what? You know, I'm going to get the next guy, and that's just kind of the mentality. You know, I don't know if that's something you're ingrained with when you're a youngster or what, but so that was part of the admiration I had. I said, gosh, these guys can control their thoughts and good positive thoughts, and they're so confident. I have such a hard time doing that, you know, and I was kind of the norm, you know, because most guys, and then so a bad at bat, first at bat of the game, let's say in a crucial situation, whatever, right? Then it affects the next at bat, because you'll notice when I would always, me and guys would joke about, say, you know what, if you have a good at bat, your first at bat of the game, it's like we used to notice, go, gosh, I usually have a good game because now I'm confident, man. You know, that first, if I strike out with two guys on base, it's like, oh, no, my confidence is kind of, you know, and then the rest of the night's kind of, so it just shows you the mental side of it, Buffalo mentality.
Yeah, baseball really plays with your mind a lot, I guess. Eh?
Yes. Yeah, yes. It's not all, man, it's not all physical. Yeah, it's a large part of it is, but it's the guys that can control here. Now, but it's interesting. Those guys that just about everyone we named off right there had off the field problems or steroid
Hmm.
problems or you know
That's true.
went to jail and all that. So they may have conquered the baseball end of it, but the other side of it, the part that matters in society, they couldn't. You know, so figure that one out. I don't know.
Well, you're an all-star at balance then, right?
Well, you know what? I would rather be an all star off the field and in society than on. I guess, no
Oh,
doubt.
no, that's definitely something that we all try to aim for.
Yeah.
Now, on the other end, on the kind of the management side, you kind of came up with a lot of really brilliant minds, like yourself, JP Ricciardi, Billy Bean, Clint Hurdle. Was this unique to the Mets, or was it something that maybe every team has a handful of these, or do you think the Mets were special?
Well, it was kind of a unique group, right? But you know, I think every organization has those guys. You know, I don't think everybody that plays the game, you know, wants to stay in and be a coach and things like that. Us baseball lifers, I guess, do you know, right?
Mhm.
Then the real world wasn't beating down the door offering me jobs either. But yeah, it was kind of a unique group. I think everybody has that. But you know, I go back to my Mets days. You know, there were so many guys that played in AAA there that went on to manage and things like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And it's like, yeah, it was kind of a I put it this way: I think maybe the Mets just did a good job of hiring guys that they thought were good baseball people.
Yeah, there's lots of even like Ron Darling and Keith Hernandez. They're really great, like just in the booth, like they're
Yeah,
lots of smart guys.
yeah, exactly. And Keith Hernandez is another guy we talk about, right? We were just talking about a minute ago. Keith was so mentally tough and strong. You weren't going to beat him, but he just knew how to. The thing is, baseball. Even the guys we're talking about, right? They still have their ups and downs, and they have their
Hmm.
demons and all that, but they're able to conquer them a little bit easier than the average Joe that doesn't make it.
Well, Keith Hernandez especially, he went through his share of problems
Oh yeah.
in St. Louis and pulled through and he was he had a good shot to even make it to the Hall of Fame this past summer, maybe next
Oh
year.
yeah, yeah. I hope so because he was a great player. Hey, he was a co-MVP with Willie Stargell one year, so yeah, he's good.
Yeah. And you've coached a lot of players. Pete Walker. I think you mentioned coaching. You coached Eric Hinsky. I think like a lot of different players. Can you tell if a player is kind of destined to be a coach, or is it something that kind of surprises you? Or
No, you never know for sure, but there's guys that they just seem to be more in tune with what's going on in the game than just that guy out there playing, right?
Mhm.
Um, you know, Russell Martin is like a prime example. Yeah, he was a catcher and all that, but you know what? I've also had catchers that they that was just the position they played. They weren't necessarily the thinking man's catcher, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And they couldn't tell you situations or anything like that. But Russell's just kind of Russell. There's just you just talk to him and it's like this is the intricacies of baseball. Another guy was like that. Another catcher, Jason Kendall, who I was coaching when we were in Kansas City.
Mhm.
And same type thing. And there's a lot of Hinsky's become a great hitting coach long after his playing days were done. But there's a lot of guys like that. Pete Walker, yeah, Pete had that. Pete had a solid playing career, but you could tell that he could teach pitching, or if he that's the what he desired, right? And sure enough,
Mhm.
he went that direction. And but then there's a lot of guys that don't. You get a guy like Greg Zahn, right? Another catcher. He was, he's a little bit out there, right? Yeah, he knew the game, but
Communicate it.
yeah, to
Yeah.
yeah to the other guys on the team, or was he going to drive him nuts, or can he, they're different times. Jerry Grody, who I talk about in the book, right? One of the all-time greatest defensive catchers. And he even tried managing the minor leagues with Detroit. That didn't last because he was so high strung and he was such a perfectionist and he couldn't relate to the young players, right? So it's not just all knowledge, right? It's you
Yeah.
still have to be able to relate and understand the personalities and say, hey, everybody can't do it as easy as let's say me or Joe Schmo.
Like Ted Williams, he wasn't the greatest coach,
Exactly. Perfect example. But that may be the best example you can give right there.
Yeah, exactly. And another guy who came up under kind of your coaching watch is John Snyder. And he was on your podcast recently. Do you see sort of similar career paths taken between the two of you?
Very. He got drafted. He was a catcher, and he wanted to have a great playing career. Same way as me, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and then when those days came to an end, we both stayed in the game. And yeah, he went down to the low minor leagues. It's the exact same thing I did. And then you knew he was destined to get to the big leagues. When an organization puts their best players with you, like Vladdy and Bichette and those guys, it's because they trust you and they know that you're going to get the most out of those guys, right?
Hmm.
So they always seem to be with Schneider's. So you kind of tell Schneid's good with young players. Plus but if they're going to send their best players in the organization to him, it tells you what they think about him, right? Schneid. And so, but he used to come to, we'd have spring training every year and he'd be down there early. He lived in the area and he was a great worker. And everybody just loved him, whether it was the players or the coaches, and through great batting practice, which is like it's like that's a number one job. Think about that. It's not like you're some. If you can throw batting practice, man, you're worth your weight in gold. How simple is that? So anyway, yeah, and he's doing a great job now, I think. And but he's a perfect example you gave him. Here's somebody that always thought would have a shot at it, and a very similar route that I took.
Yeah, and now maybe this is kind of too simple of a question, but like, how much is it a grind? How much of a grind is it to manage 162 plus games over the course of a year, in and out?
It's rough, man. It really is. Matt, baseball's baseball's. They've it's longer now than it used to be, but everybody will tell you, man, the season's too long. Next thing you know, it's freezing cold out. You're playing the playoffs.
Mhm.
But I think that gets guys the most is there's very few days off. There's more now than there used to be, right? And when you're doing something every day, if you're the manager, I mean, the results your team is getting affects the scoreboard controls your life, right?
Yeah.
If you're winning, you're feeling much better. If you're losing, you're not. But it goes like this, and even the great teams. So there's so many ups and downs, emotional swings, and then a lot of times you got your families are back home, so you got to deal with that, and your poor wife's got to worry, but she's raising the kids, and it's like you got the normal things, but you can't be there to help out, and yet you're worried about getting fired or something because teams lost 10 in a row. But and then you're doing it every day, and you really can't get away from it a lot of times, and the traveling's first class, but it's hard. You're flying here, there, everywhere. Yeah, so I think it's not all fun and games that everybody thinks, but it sure is a lot of fun and games.
Yeah. Now, have you had a chance to see the dimensions at Rogers Center? The
Yes,
new ones? Yeah. How do you
I
think?
like the new. I love the new the new setup. The only thing they may have trouble is with those bullpens. The fact that for the visiting team anyway, they get access to those players. That's I was watching a game when I was up there, against Detroit, and the guys coming down. That could present a problem. I'm sure the league will step in, or the Players Association. I guarantee it will step in.
Yeah, and I don't think it's unique to it's not the only ballpark like that. I think Boston is pretty intimate as far as the bullpens go too.
Yeah, but there's like a barrier there. It's almost like there's no
Okay.
barrier there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and they've had issues in the past, so hopefully security is on their toes. How do you think it's going to play out, like the new dimensions? They say it's going to be neutral, but do you think that's really going to be the case? Is it going to be a hitter's park or a neutral park?
Hey, it's always been a hitter park, man. I mean, that place is one of the best home run hitting places there is, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And now you lowered the fence in certain areas, and the configuration makes it shorter in some areas. Yeah, it's probably going to add to its reputation as hitter friendly. And I guarantee your pitchers don't like pitching there. That's for dang sure.
That's probably true.
Oh.
What do you think about and I think I know I've heard you talk about this, but what do you think about the new rules in place this year?
You know what? Well, I guess it's it seems like it's lopsided one way, that everybody likes the pace of the game and all that. And if that's the case, that's fine. I'm not. I'm like everybody else. I like a faster paced game, but I also understood that there's certain players that have to. We were talking about. Remember, I talked about slowing the game down a while ago. We were talking. They deliberately have to slow themselves down to be successful. And so to be fair to them, what's it play too? Was it last night's game, or that Vladdy Jr. got struck out?
Yeah, last night. Yeah, he struck out. Yep.
Should that happen? I mean, really, here's like one of the marquee players in the game. People want to watch him play. And he gets struck out on a technicality like that or something. It's like, to me, that's not what this is all about, So, and there will be. We were talking to Russell Martin the other day on our podcast, and even Russell was saying, it's the exact same feeling I had when you get to the postseason, especially. But you get late in games when the game's on the line. You're setup man and closer, and the game generally slows down because of the magnitude of the situation. If it's a game that's close enough, right? And I don't think anybody has a problem with that. It's just like, so maybe let's not get too. It's almost like we're trying to just get him. We're just trying to change as much as we can, just for I don't know. Maybe the commission wants his legacy to be, I don't know, time of game. But the commercials are longer. That adds to all that stuff, and that's money. So I get that, but my feeling has always been, because I've been a baseball fan. If the game's moving slow and it's not a very good game, turn it off or go home. And think about this too, Matt. The cost, the salaries they pay now, and the cost of the ticket for somebody to bring his family to a game, right? I mean, it's expensive, isn't it? I mean,
Mhm.
really expensive, right? Then you're going to buy concessions for your kids, all that, right? Costs a lot of money. So if that's the case, a lot of people don't go to many games. So if they go 1 or 2 a year, let's say that's a lot. That's just, a lot of people can't afford many more than that. Why would they want a fast game, man? They want to sit there and enjoy it all day as much as they can, because
Yeah.
they're not the everyday guys. So I don't know.
Now, from the strategic side, do you think it makes a manager's job easier or harder?
Well, you know what? I mean, I don't think these guys are adjusting. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But is it hurting their performance? My the fact, like you said, we're talking about Vladdy Jr. last night. Or yeah, really, he should be. I mean, if he's trying to get a big hit or do something, right? So maybe he's not, mind's not in the right spot, or maybe
Mhm.
something in the box he needs to take a minute, like they've always been able to in the baseball, so that he can get in there and people get their money's worth and he gets his money, whatever. You got to be able to do that. I don't think he should be struck out on a technicality. That, to me, that's just like,
Mhm. Mhm.
we're getting a little crazy here.
Yeah. Now, from your experience over,
Oh,
I
man,
guess,
real quick, Matt. Let me
yep,
ask you something. Okay,
sure.
say the Blue Jays are playing the Braves in the World Series, right?
Uh-huh.
The seventh game of the World Series, whatever that situation, a big game on the line, right? Vladdy's hitting, right? A couple guys on bases, juice, they're down or they're whatever. He gets banged, he gets rung up because of that. You think that's gonna go over well in the Toronto or in the baseball world, or are we gonna have egg on our face?
Well, no, if in Game 7 and he strikes out on the pitch clock rule, it would not go over well. But at the same time, I would think by the time the playoffs come around, if assuming that they don't change any pitch clock times or anything like that, I think that these guys should know and be in the moment as professionals enough to kind of know that they need to be ready.
Okay, but all right. Did you see the WBC?
I did,
Any of
yeah,
that? Did you see that last at bat? They said the greatest bat in history, Otani versus Trout, right?
yeah, yeah,
Did you see that one?
yeah. I did, yeah.
Yeah, they track the time on that. Every in between every pitch of that at bat, and everybody was glued, man. This is what they want to see. It was at least 30 seconds in between every pitch, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Nobody had a problem with that, because this is the game. This is what everybody wants to see.
Hmm.
So in baseball too, most people, especially the younger kids that they're trying to attract, I think, they love those 10 to 9 games, right? Where it's a slugfest.
Hmm.
But those games last 4 hours. Those games are long because there's so much action. People, I guess they just want action. But you got to remember, baseball is not an action-packed game a lot of times. It's just a slow-moving game. It can be boring. That's just so it's kind of like, maybe if it speeds it up, you get them out of there quicker. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, of course it'll work. There's no doubt, but you don't always have to have change for the sake of change, for crying out
Well,
loud.
no, I would agree with that. I gotta I'm being honest. I am a fan of the new pace of play, but I was not opposed to the old pace of play either. But I think like speeding the game up a little bit is good. Myself being a father of a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, I can't stay up too late. So these actually these game times are perfectly timed for my lifestyle. But guys like you guys who've grown up in the game, and this is the first year they've implemented this pitch clock in the majors. At least it's definitely a big change, right?
Well, where it'll smooth out, because they're using the minor leagues, and so a lot of the guys that are present day big leaguers, they've been there the last few years, that aren't used to it. Eventually, the guys that take over the game are the guys in the minor leagues now,
Mhm.
that's all they know, right? So that'll become natural. But for guys that aren't used to that, it. But so how many minutes is it cutting off an average a game? You got any idea now?
I think on average it's close to a half hour, I would say.
Okay, all right. Now is a half hour? That's like a sitcom. Is a half hour really that like
For
life
me, for me, that could be nodding off territory. I could miss the ninth inning.
Why don't they start the games earlier?
Well, I don't know. Well, see, like that's a good question. Yeah, I guess like you said with the commercials, it's all TV and advertisement that
Yeah.
factors into that, right? So
Or why
yeah,
don't every time there's a close play, they get well, hey, wait a minute, listen, we want to look at it in our clubhouse to see if we want to replay it, right? Why don't you just eliminate that then? Because that happens a lot during games, right? And just say, okay, if you disagree with the umpire's call, you're the manager. It's my eyes against yours. Appeal it right away, right? Then you don't have that. Well, give us a minute to look at it before we decide whether. What? How fair is that? You know what I mean?
that would be extra fun, and I think that would eliminate those like hands off the bag kind of little plays like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, yeah. You talk about that. Game wasn't designed that way. Come on. That's like
Yeah.
really. And I tell you what. I guess Matt, the ones that drives me the craziest is like when in the you go extra innings, right? You start with a runner on second. Right? That's come on. I mean, now you're getting into the history of the game as far as the at bat. I mean, just runs scored. It's like that's almost little leagueish to me. That's definitely that's amateur ball. And
I agree with that. I agree with that.
and I know people some games go 18, 19 innings, but if you're a team at the end of the year, you survive some of those long extra inning games, you still win it. And you know what, you earn that because everybody goes through them, right?
Yeah, you've been through your fair share of those for sure, and
Oh
especially if
yeah.
they're gonna implement the pitch clock, why do you need to speed up the extra innings that much more, right?
Exactly. Anyway, I'm just kidding. I'm just an old fart, man. That's all.
Well, it's all good. It's good to hear different perspectives. Now you mentioned a while back about like being part of that Kansas City coaching staff. You're the bench coach for the early, I think just before they made it to the World Series, the early 2010s.
Right. Mm-hmm.
How does the current Blue Jays team compare to that early 2010s core with like Salvador Perez, Eric Hosmer, Mike Moustakas, Danny Duffy, Greg Holland, Lorenzo Cain, guys like that?
Yeah, I tell you what, yeah, when I got fired in '08 from the Blue Jays, and I went over there and I was in Kansas City for 3 years. I was a bench coach under Trey Hillman, brought me over. After a year and a half, he got fired. Then Ned Yost came in and he kept me around. And I tell you what, I had you look at the Blue Jays young core now. I mean, you're not going to get any better in Vladdy and Bichette, right? And
Mm-hmm,
yeah,
mm-hmm.
Romano and Danny Jansen, and you go. These are the homegrown guys, right? And then the same way when I was over with the Mets, the system just kept putting these guys out, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so same way in Kansas City when I was over, the Hosmer, Billy Butler was there, Alex Gordon, like you said. Then they traded Greinke, to Milwaukee to bring in those guys, Lorenzo Cain and Alcides Escobar
Right.
and then Salvador came up through the Royal system, but nobody thought he was ever going to be much of a hitter, right? Now he's a great hitter. So when that group all got there together, it's like, damn, look at all these guys, right? And you know what? The thing they had going for them, they played together in the minor leagues and they won in the minor leagues. But so they get to the big leagues. They're going through some growing pains when I was there, but we had no pitching. But I can remember thinking, when this team gets some pitching, watch out, right? They had a brilliant GM, Dayton Moore. He ended up getting fired this past year, and he's down there as the assistant GM down there in Texas, right? That's how smart baseball guys, right? They fire the best GM they've ever had, and they're basically, if you finish below a couple games below 500, whatever's last year, and then we got to get a new manager and blah blah. Now they got the worst record in the game. It's like, well, okay, well that paid off anyway. So um, you could just see it happen, and then things turned, and Dayton brought in some pitching, and next thing you know, but they played a different style of ball that was taking over the game at that time. They hit their home runs, but they played in a big ballpark, right? Everybody in their lineup could run.
Mm-hmm.
They were the best defensive team by far in the game. And they had remember the run outfielder Gerard Dyson. He late in the game, if the game was tied or one-run game, it doesn't matter who got on first base. They pinch run him. He steals second, maybe steal third. You couldn't throw him out, right? And so you're not going to beat them in you weren't going to beat them in 1-run close games. They were because they were manufactured with the best of them, right? They put the ball in play, which the game starting to turn into home runs, and it won it for them, right? There's no doubt about it. So it's a different. They were probably the Lone Rangers out there. Everybody else, the other 29 teams were doing it the other way, but they said this is our ballpark. We got to be, build this team according to our ballpark. And that's what they did. But then they, low budget. They're not like the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays can sustain that now. They got the money. They Midwest team over there. They didn't, so they had to break it up little by little.
Yeah, Alcides Escobar was a Blue Jay killer with all his just like slap hitting. It was frustrating to watch watching those playoffs.
Oh, yeah, and a great little shortstop, man.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I won't keep you too much longer.
You're good.
Yeah. Just one last question for you about Jose Bautista. I'm not sure if you heard this, but he'll be added to the level of excellence for the Blue Jays in August.
Well deserved.
I was gonna. How deserving is he of this honor? What was he like? What was he like to coach?
Well, he's no brainer. He's one of the all-time greatest Blue Jays. He put all his. Think too about Jose. Jose made his name. He came into his own playing in Toronto, right? He was a journeyman. He was. Everybody thought he was a utility player. He didn't agree with that, right? And then he got together with Cito Gaston. Cito's a great hitting instructor as well. And he kind of put him or got in his head the right way. And next thing you know, Jose was banging, right? Now he's one of the great home run hitters in the game. So, you look at his numbers compared to the other Blue Jays of the past. He's right up there with the all-time greats, and it's exciting, And he, I say this. People ask me about Jose. The one thing I always bring up is that, probably more than any other player I managed in the major leagues, Jose would show up ready to play, wanting to play more than anybody I ever had, right? And you figured, well, that's a given. Everybody should. No, some guys are banged up and they don't, or they're motivated, but not like this guy. I mean, Jose, number one, he thought he had that chip on his shoulder. He thought he got the raw deal early on, so he was going to maximize the rest of his career, however long that was going to be, right? And he also had a great understanding that people paid to see him play, which is true, And so there's a number of times he could have had a day off, and I talked to him. I said, "I bet you need a day off." The rest, he goes, "No, I need to play, right?" And he was also, he wanted to make money, So he was, every at bat, every game he missed, less opportunity to hit a home run or something like that. So he was. I mean, an incredible competitor. He wasn't well liked in the league now, unless he was on your team. But he was gonna maximize whatever his career was, because I think a lot of it because he thought he got cheated early on, and it turns out he did.
For sure. Maybe okay. One last question for you, because you're a host. You host a podcast yourself now. What's it like? You were a manager on getting interviewed by countless reporters. What's it like being on the other side of the mic?
Well, it's definitely different. You know what? We focus primarily on the Blue Jays players, and we talk some baseball around the league and things like that. And eventually we'll probably expand it, It is a little bit different on the other side, asking questions. I think I got the inside track on something. I know what these guys are thinking, and we try to throw out some things. And it's been when I have guys most of the guys I've had, I've known somewhat anyway. And it's a lot of fun reminiscing and things like that. And we try to, hopefully to entertain the folks a little bit. But it's been fun. We used to do it on Mondays, and I sit in here and it's a feel good thing. It's something that, we're not in there to rip anybody and all the, and because I do understand how tough it is. But what they got it. The best part about it is the Blue Jays have a great team. They could very well win it all this year. So it's a good team to cover,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's definitely feel good. Your book, Gibby, Tales from a Baseball Lifer, is also a really feel good book to read. I really enjoyed it.
Well, man, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. It's always great to kind of get into your mind and know what was going on behind the scenes.
Oh, that's scary. That's scary. Hey, Buffalo mentality, man.
Yes, right into the storm. Gibby, thanks so much for joining me.
Hey, man, anytime, man. I appreciate you having me on here, and I appreciate your support.